Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Blue-White Spirits, and this time we're running up against a fairly tasty new list that's been running around. I've been calling it Tezzerator. It's essentially lantern control, but it doesn't play the lantern lock. So I've got a list up here actually, just so you can see it for anyone who's not familiar with it or hasn't seen it in the lists. This is one of, I think, at least a couple of lists that I've seen. It's played by Misfortune to a 5-0 in the modern dailies. The modern leagues rather. So this is the list. It's pretty spicy. Essentially, as I say, it's kind of lantern control without the lantern lock. Instead, you've got Tezzerator the Seeker, which is pretty nice. It can be a potential win condition, and it's also an additional tutor. You've got Artificer's Intuition, if I said that right. Artificer? I guess so. So that's another way of tutoring as well for your one-cost artifacts. So you can find your Pithing Needle, your Pyrite Spellbomb, your Grafdigger's Cage, Crucible of Worlds, etc. So you've got lots of sort of one-offs, and you've got a bit more of a sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Toolbox, I guess. So it's more. I guess it's a bit more of a toolbox deck. There's more tutoring involved, and more sort of searching out things. We've also got Chalice of the Void in the deck, which is one of the better disruptive cards, and we've got Ghost Quarters and things, Field of Ruins, to disrupt our the opponent's mana. How do you win is a pretty good question. So, as far as I understand it anyway, because it took me a while to think what's the win condition, because essentially the deck is against most decks either looking to lock down with Chalice or Ensnaring Bridge. From there, the win condition, I guess, is either Durapur Ether Grid, which then you can just ping your opponents to death, and there's one copy of that in the deck. Or alternatively, I guess, as I say, you can Ensnaring Bridge with a Bottled Cloister, which then means you exile your hand and draw an extra card each turn. So you can build up your hand while still preventing your opponent from attacking. And then I guess eventually you could use Tezzeret as ultimate, and then a swing with a load of 5/5 artifacts to kill off your opponent. But I assume the preferred method is to kill them with the Ether Grid, if possible. But yeah, there are a couple of win conditions in the deck. But yeah, that's possibly the more confusing part of the deck. Here's a sideboard as well, just in case you wanted to see it. Let me show what this card does. Draw a card. They skip that draw instead. At the end of turn, each player sacrifices a permanent. He or she discards a card. Okay, not entirely sure what that's for. But yeah, it's an interesting deck. I haven't had a chance to play it myself, but it certainly seems pretty spicy. Yeah, that's what we're running up against here. So let's get back to the game. So, here's our opening hand. It's certainly not too bad. We've got Wanderer, Arbiter, and Spell Queller, so that's a nice little curve. And we've also got Curious Obsession, which we can look to hook up to the Wanderer potentially and start drawing some cards. So, lead off with Wanderer. Plays an Expedition map, which certainly makes me happy about having this Arbiter in hand. Expedition map's kind of interesting in their deck. It's kind of an odd card. I don't think it's strictly necessary, but there are quite a few utility lands in their deck. So they've got Ghost Quarter. They have, well, let's all take a look. They've got Talaria West, which can be a tutor. I suppose that you can search that. If you want to search that up, you can get an Inventor's Fair. You've also got Academy Ruins, which is very good. There's a Field of Ruin in the deck as well. Rivulet. case you want to mill your opponent, I guess. I'm not entirely sure what that's there for. But there are a number of cards you can tutor up with the expedition map, which could be useful. Unfortunately, we've kind of seen our opponent off of that. But it also has Artificer's, I still don't know how to say this, but Artificer's Intuition, which again, having the Arbiter out here is pretty good. Means our opponent can't really search, or not until a bit later on in the game. I'm going to pass here with Spell Queller up. Opponent doesn't really do anything. I'm going to play Curious Obsession to draw a card. That's back. We kind of messed up here, I suppose. So we played the Curious Obsession, but our opponent's actually able to use our Leonin and Arbiter against us here and kill one of our lands. We don't really want to pay for the Arbiter, because then our opponent can use his Expedition map or his Intuition. But this gives our opponent a window to stick it in his Snaring Bridge, basically. So I think the right play actually would have just been to not play Curious Obsession, but I didn't see the Ghost Quartering as coming, and we paid fairly heavily for it. As I mentioned in our video against the normal Lantern control, Ensnaring Bridge is cripplingly bad for us, and we can't actually do anything about it. Particularly main deck, and we don't really have a lot of options sideboard. So once it's stuck, we're pretty much done. And you can just see our opponent sort of going off here. He plays Tezzerator, which can then tutor up whatever our opponent particularly wants. I think our opponent's paying for our Arbiters now and tutoring his Bottled Cloister, which ensures that he never has any cards in his hand on his turn, while drawing additional cards. Then fetches up another Ensnaring Bridge. And yeah, we just call it a day here. I maybe should just play this out to see exactly how our opponent was going to win the game, but he kind of has unlimited options at this point. We're not going to be able to do anything of particular relevance. I mean, I suppose we could have Spell Quellered a Ether Grid if he tried to do that. So then he would have had to like attack through us with Tezzerator's Ultimate, I think, is how that deck how the deck works. Because otherwise, I suppose he could also have milled us potentially if he wanted to. I guess that's what the Rivulet's for, just to sort of make sure you're up on on cards in your library. But yeah, maybe I should have just played this out to see what the win condition was and play for time. But this just seems fairly miserable, and we don't have any realistic fashion in which we're going to win this game. So I just called it a day. But maybe we should have sort of pushed our opponent for a win condition, particularly given that might have taken up quite a lot of their clock, I guess. So let's go into sideboarding. So when it comes to sideboarding, I guess the sideboarding is kind of much the same as a Lantern control. Certainly one of the Ceremonious Rejections as a counter spell for Ensnaring Bridge, or anything else that's particularly unpleasant. Stony Silence doesn't do quite as much here as it does against Lantern, so I'm not even sure we actually want it, because there's not a whole lot of cards that have activated abilities. I suppose it turns off Spell Bomb, Mox Opal, Bauble. I mean, I suppose it turns off enough things. Instead, yeah, it turns off Engineering Explosives. There's quite a lot of cards that it doesn't affect, like Chalice, like Ensnaring Bridge, Pithing Needle, etc. So I don't know. It's possibly not as good here as it is against the Lantern. other cards. Certainly want Kataki if we can get that, and obviously because our opponent's not got the Lantern combo, there's certainly a better chance of us eventually drawing some of our hate cards like Kataki, and there's no counter magic or anything, so that certainly plays to our advantage in some degree, and is one of the reasons why I'm not fully convinced that this list is better than just playing Lantern control, because if your opponent does have answers in their deck, eventually they will get a chance to draw them, so you're really kind of having to sort of set up as big a brick wall as you possibly can, and as I say, the deck doesn't win particularly quickly, whereas with Lantern you can at least control your opponent's draws and make sure that they never draw anything relevant, and then eventually you've got the sort of inevitability of the mill, whereas this deck just doesn't have that and possibly gives your opponent too much time. But I don't know, I've certainly not played with it enough. I haven't really played much Lantern because I'm a pretty slow player, so I just don't really have much confidence playing that deck. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear from someone who's played the deck to hear what the sort of upsides are over just traditional Lantern. So yeah, Ceremonious Rejection. I think we're on the Unified Wills to make sure we can counter their Ensnaring Bridge, which is the biggest problem for us. Yeah, unsure about Stony Silence. Maybe we just leave that out because it's not the best. In terms of cards we're taking out, definitely taking out the Paths. Curious Obsession's okay, I guess, but I'd probably rather just have some creatures. Vile is still good, I think. Yeah, I think taking out some number of Paths, possibly the Curious Obsessions. Arbiter seems particularly good in this matchup because of all the tutor effects that they're trying to sort of use. So yeah, maybe Thalia's not our best. No, I think Thalia's pretty good actually. Because obviously still taxes artifacts. So yeah, I think fairly happy with most of the main deck. I think we can take out the Paths, bring in the Ceremonious Rejections, Katakis, and then I suppose Phantasmal Image is maybe not its best, given that they're not going to be running any creatures that are worth copying. So maybe take those out for the Unified Wills. Okay, so we're game 2. So run the Vial. I'm play the Expedition map and a Mox Opal. I'm going to play Arbiter, which is going to turn off the Expedition map quite nicely. There's a Bauble and a Ghost Quarter. Ghost Quarter is going to take one of our lands, unfortunately, so we'll pay the price for our own Arbiter. We get to attack for 3 here. Actually, we're going to Vial in Selfless Spirit here to get in for an extra point of damage. We'll play Inventor's Fair. He's going to be able to gain 1 life a turn. We're going to be able to attack for 5 here. We've got Spell Queller up with the Ava Vial. But things about playing something and then doesn't, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to drop Drog Skull Captain in end of turn. So here we get to attack for 9. Put one down to 3. Ghost Quarter his Inventor's Fair. Possibly didn't need to do that, to be quite honest. He uses an Expedition map which finds Island, interestingly. Yeah, I mean, I guess he was setting up for a big. Yeah, I guess he was setting up for Whir of Invention to find Ensnaring Bridge, but he's a turn away from that basically on the mana he's got, which works out pretty well. Or else actually Whir doesn't work because of Arbiter as well. So that worked out pretty well. We were able to beat our opponent down fairly quickly, and our opponent didn't really get up to much. Okay, here we are with game 3. So we're just going to lead off with a Wanderer. We've got Ceremonious Rejection, which is really nice here. As a counter for the Ensnaring Bridge that we fear so much. Our opponent does have a turn 3 Ensnaring Bridge, but we're able to reject that, which works out pretty nicely for us. Now we're just going to keep up Spell Queller here. Opponent plays an Expedition map, which I don't think we care enough about. And certainly we don't want to Spell Queller and then let our opponent Ensnaring Bridges. Opponent searches up Academy Ruins, which obviously is a bit of a danger as it can return the Ensnaring Bridge back to the top of his library. Our opponent plays Engineered Explosives, which he then cracks on the beginning of our upkeep. This gives a window to kill off the Academy Ruins, which we're certainly going to do. So our opponent can't just return the Ensnaring Bridge to the top of his library. Opponent plays Aethergrid. Again, I don't want to run into a situation where I can't counter Ensnaring Bridge. So I let that one go. It's kind of questionable because he's only got one in this deck. That maybe we should have got rid of this because it is essentially one of the main win conditions of the deck. So maybe we should have countered that, but opponent hadn't played a land drop for his turn, so he could have very easily played a basic and then Ensnaring Bridge does. So that was my thoughts, but I don't know if we've played this a little bit too cagily. Because as it turns out, our opponent has Tezzerator, which we can't Spell Queller because it costs 5. He's able then to tutor up Ensnaring Bridge, and he also is able to play a Chalice for 1. And yeah, at this point, we're basically done. Our opponent can use the Aethergrid to shoot us repeatedly. It can kill off most of our creatures at this point without too much difficulty. Probably should have ticked up this Vial at some point. I think I was trying to play around the fact that we can't ever play 1-drops. I suppose it doesn't really matter at this point because playing creatures isn't overly relevant. And yeah, we're basically done here. And our opponent actually does have a win condition here that works pretty well. We do draw the Stony Silence. I did bring that in for this matchup, but doesn't really do enough because it's the Grid's ability that actually shoots us repeatedly, so not much we can do about that. And yeah, our opponent can pick off all our creatures. He's got a Bottled Cloister, and yeah, I just wrap up the game here because there's nothing we can do, and our opponent actually does have a clear win condition from here. Kind of rough. As I say, we don't have any answers to Ensnaring Bridge once it's on the board, which is a big problem. And this deck, actually more than Lantern Control, has ways of tutoring it up. So yeah, kind of a problem. And these matchups are pretty rough.